I'm Kate and welcome to my channel. So it is June, which means it's time to talk about my palette use for the month of May. I did this video for April as well, and I was really surprised by how many views it got. This is again more for my own records to keep track of what I'm using, what I'm not using, to maybe help me with my declutter at the end of the year, and just to make sure that I'm cycling through things in my collection and giving everything a fair chance. So I'm going to start by talking about the palettes that I just used once. I have a couple things I used twice, and then a few of the newer things to my collection that I used multiple times. So I'm going to again start with lower use and work my way up. And then along the way, I will share the looks that I created with these palettes. So the first palette that I'm going to share was one of my multi-use palettes last month, but I only dipped into it once this month, and that's from Blend Bunny. This is the Surge palette. I love it. One of my favorite palettes in my collection. I think this time I just did kind of an orangey toned look, but I know this will get a lot of use this summer, especially with these neons. I really like to be bright and bold in the summer, so I did use this one time in May. Another palette that I used one time from Shroud, this is the Creepy Cute palette. So this is probably my favorite like pastel palette. I did a look combining the greens, so I combined like the acid green with the mint green, and just for like an all matte look. I feel like I don't give this palette the love that it deserves, probably because I typically like to go a little darker and bolder, but when I do need a pastel, this is definitely where I pop into. Another one-time use palette this month is from Kaleidos. This is the Sashimi City palette, probably my favorite out of the Kaleidos Futurism palettes. It is a very neutral palette, but not boring at all. The shimmers are really pretty and duochromy. The mattes blend perfectly. Out of my Futurism palettes, this is probably the one I do reach for the most, but I used it one time in May. I reached for this BH palette one time this month. This is the Summer in Saint-Tropez palette. This is one of the first BH palettes that I picked up. Kind of one of my first dives into color as well. These BH palettes, the 16 pan, square pan palettes, are amazing, and this is no exception. You can go really colorful, but you can also tone it down quite a bit. Then the mattes are really nice and colorful, but the shimmers are pretty simple, so I do love this palette and I used it once. Next up is a melt collection. So I actually have both of them. I have to show them together because they belong together. I used each of these one time. So this is the Muerte, which was originally my favorite of the two. And I used this one time this month. I think I did like a teal look. These are some of the best reds I have, and the teals are beautiful. So I used this one time. And then I also used the Vita one time. And I did a really bright, like reddish orange look with this palette. This one I did not originally pick up, but then I had to complete the pair, and I'm really glad I did. I probably use this one more than I used the Muerte, because, you know, since getting them, I've gotten a lot more into the bright tones, so this is beautiful, and I used it one time. The last palette that I only used once is from Natasha Denona, probably my favorite of her palettes. This is the Gold palette. We had a wedding last weekend for a family member, so this is what I use. This is one of my go-to, like, special event when I'm going more neutral. I don't go neutral often, but for special events I typically do, and this is beautiful. Alright, next up are my two-use palettes. So first up from ColourPop, this is the Pretty Guardian, which is the Sailor Moon palette. I used this twice. I don't remember what the first use was, but I know the second one I did like a super flowery look with like Suva Beauty liners and just a little bit of this. This is another one that turned out to be an unexpected favorite for me. I don't like that the mattes have glitter in them, but they're still usable. The glitter goes away anyways, but this is a beautiful palette and I used it twice. My newest palette from Juvia's Place is the Allure 3, and I used this twice. This is beautiful. So I think I more just did two different shapes. There aren't a lot of directions to go color story wise, but this blue is really pretty and special. So I feel like anytime I grab this palette, I'm probably going to dip into that, but the shadows perform great, just like most of Juvia's palettes, but I did use this twice. Alright, something I'm trying to do every month is to create like a custom palette for myself, somewhere between like 12 and 18 shades. So for the month of May, I created a palette using all Divina shadows, and it's very springy and colorful. I feel like on camera you can't see like the shifts in those shimmers. The bottom row plus this one are all the shimmers. So it's a very like springy palette that you can go colorful, you can go neutral, but I used this twice this month. I would have dipped into it a lot more if I didn't have the three newer palettes that I'm going to share next. Since I was making videos on them, I was dipping into them a lot more often, but I really enjoyed this. I liked the colors that I chose, so I think for my June palette, it's going to be a lot more bright and bold and maybe pulling from a few different brands, but I I used my Davina shadows twice. Alright, the next palette is one that's newer to me, and I used it 4 times. I think 2 of the looks were in a video, and then I did 2 other looks on my own. And it's from Black Moxie. This is the Boundless Bloom palette in collaboration with Pixie Glow. And this is just a beautiful palette. I think in my rankings video recently, I did swatch these 2 shades, and they're beautiful. Probably in my swatches on Instagram, I have swatches as well, so check it out if you're interested. I do have a code with Black Moxie. It is Kate15, Kate with a C. If you haven't tried Black Moxie, I feel like I say this in every video I mention them. They're a fantastic brand. Palettes are beautiful. I have a huge collection of shimmers. I think I'm up to like 19 of them, and they're beautiful shimmers, beautiful singles collection. This is my 3rd Black Moxie palette, and I love all the ones that I have, but I dipped into this 4 times this month. The newest to me palette is from Glaminatrix, and I used this 5 times this month. And it's the Nocturnal palette. This color story is everything to me. It is everything. This is beautiful. I did put out a video doing 3 looks, so I will link that below as well. I also have a video on the Black Moxie palette and the next one that I'm going to talk about, so I will link them all below. I love this. I have done a neutral look, a bluey purple look, a grungy look, a green look. I've done 2 like super multi-colorful looks. I did a fun look with this when my sister and I went to Moulin Rouge, and I just find myself wanting to grab for this a lot. So I used this 5 times this month, and I'll probably use it a lot next month too. So from Glaminatrix, this is Nocturnal. And my most used palette this month is one that I did not purchase for myself. So I saw this palette and I thought it was really pretty. Lots of colorful mattes, which is my thing, but not a lot of like super deep shades, which I prefer in my mattes. So I did put it on my wish list, and my sister picked it up for my birthday. And it is from Nomad. This is the Paradise Islands palette. I used this 6 times in the month of May. I think then I've used it a total of 7 times, because I think I used it the very last day of April as well, so it was featured in that video too. But this is my most used palette for the month of May, which surprises me because while it's beautiful, it's not necessarily like fully me, but I really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to. I love the brand. You can't go wrong with Nomad's shadows. Their mattes especially are beautiful, but some of the shimmers are just really fun, and these are really like a Paradise Islands color story. So 6 times, and I'm sure this summer I will pull for it more just because it's really bright and fun. I feel like the colors just end up a lot bolder than they necessarily look here because Nomad's formula is great. Their shadows are super pigmented, but they blend out beautifully. I've loved every look that I've created, and this will be a really fun palette for summer. So that's my palette usage for the month of May. I used a total of 13 palettes, one of those being my custom Davina palette. I still have to put together my June custom palette, so if you have any ideas, leave them below. I anticipate the month of June will be even more colorful and fun because it's the start of summer. I only have, as of today, 6 more student days left. Yay! And then it is summer vacation, so be ready for fun and colorful in the weeks to come. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.